Namaskar. Naumi chit pratibham devim param bhairava yoginim matriman prameyansha shulam bhuja kritaspadam. That supreme energy, which is the light of consciousness, which is one with supreme consciousness, Bhairava, and which is stationed on the three spikes of Trishula, the three spikes of knower, object of knowledge, and means of knowledge. Matri, the perceiver, Man, the means of perception, and Prameya, the objects of perception. And these three are the coordinates of human experience. The Tantra says in this verse that supreme energy is stationed in the three coordinates of experience. We keep coming back to these three coordinates of the knower, the knowledge, and the means of knowledge. The perceiver, the objects of perception, and the means of perception. Today's talk is on Introduction to Tantra. Tantra is a very intense field of scriptures, practices, rituals, mysticism, philosophy, metaphysics. So it is difficult to introduce tantras in a lecture because they need a lifetime of engagement. But we will be doing a very basic survey of tantric systems, basically from the point of view of the practices. And I'll also touch briefly on the metaphysics of the tantras if I get time. The word tantra has two components, Tanoti and traayate. It comes from the Sanskrit root tanu vistare, which means that which expands. Tanoti, that which expands, and traayate, that which frees, that which protects, that which liberates. These are different meanings of traayate in different contexts. But together, Tanoti and traayate make Tantra, and the meaning which can be derived from these two components is that anything which expands the consciousness and liberates it from its limitations will come under the aegis of Tantra. In that sense, everything, every tool, every method which can expand our limited consciousness and which can liberate it from its what is traditionally called bondages is Tantra. In the religious and spiritual context, the word Tantra is a discipline, is a name given to a discipline, a system. And since this system relates to Shiva, so the Tantras are also called Shaiva Tantras. Actually, there are three tantric traditions which come down from history. These are 10 Shaiva Tantras, 18 Rudra Tantras, and 64 Bhairava Tantras. These are the scriptures which are divided according to their philosophical stance of dualism, dual cum non-dual, and absolute non-dualism. So, but that's of no consequence here, in the sense that these are matters to be discussed on different platform. Here we are going through from the vantage point of basically a seeker, a practitioner, an initiate who is already aware. To such a person, we are making this address about introduction to the tantras. So come back to the point where I said that tantras are systems, are disciplines which focus on the experience, which focus on the immediate self-experience, as against the injunctions which promise a certain experience. Tantras begin from, you may say, inductive experience rather than deductive experience. So that's why tantras are also known as agamas. That means agacchati iti agama. The experience that comes on its own spontaneously is an agama. And the source which brings that experience is also an agama or a tantra. So the tantras are, as I said, are very well-defined systems. They organize their premises on in four dimensions. That means every tantra, whether it is Bhairava or Rudra or Shiva Tantra, and earlier there were also 5 more tantras like Ganapati, Saur, Devi, Vishnu, and so on. These are not extant, but Shaiva tantras are extant, and they organize themselves around 4 systems, which are the Vidya, the knowledge part, the Kriya, the ritual part, the Yoga, which is to do with the postures, breathing, this part, and Charya, which is the ethical achara, the ethical behavior, which is to be given to the initiate. So Vidya, in the tantric scriptures, Vidya is the knowledge about the cosmology, the cosmogony, the levels of origination, which in Sankhya, for instance, are tattvas. From Sankhya philosophy, we come to know first about the tattvas, which are levels in the creation, levels of, they are called, yes, they are called in Sanskrit tattvas. And in English, we try to translate them as the levels of creation or levels of origination. From Prithvi Tattva up to the Purusha, Sankhya gives 25 tattvas, 25 levels of origination. But the Tantras talk about 36 tattvas from the Prithvi, from the earth element right up to the Shiva Tattva. That is not my subject right now. What I'm trying to say that tantras are not just ritual pools with practices happening in the cremation grounds or the avadhutas with bhasm, these images that come to our mind when we say the word tantra. Tantras are treatises of practices, of knowledge systems, of yoga, and also of achara. As I said, charya is a very important aspect of the tantras. So, and another important part is that Diksha is the most important prerequisite for entry into the Tantra fold. Now, just to say a few words about the origin of the Tantras. Tantras have their antecedents in the Vedic fold itself, in the Vedic culture itself. As we know, the Vedic in the Vedic tradition, our life was categorized into 4 ashramas: the brahmacharya, the grihastha, vanaprastha, and the sannyasa. That is, and these ashramas are then informed by the 4 purusharthas, or 4 purusharthas, which are supposed to be the purposes of human life. These are dharma, artha, kama, and moksha. So all the purusharthas have to be followed in these 4 ashramas, and each ashrama emphasizes on a particular purushartha. And moksha, which is the paramartha, that means which is the ultimate purpose of human life according to Vedic conception, they say that it automatically follows if the first 3 ashramas, or if all the ashramas are observed strictly according to Vedic injunctions. Now, this very strict Brahminical system led to some kind of resistance in some Brahmanas, and we get the narratives that some Brahmanas moved away from this ashrama system of the Vedic setup because they wanted to not go through all the ashramas. They renounced the Vedic fold and Vedic notions, strict Vedic notions of sacred and profane. These were ascetics, in the sense they renounced. So they were ascetics, and they were called Atya Ashramis. And their path was called Ati Marga, because they took to extreme practices, and they went to the periphery of the mainstream systems. And these were perhaps the first tantrics. The first tantric system that we get it from one such ascetic who is famous by the name of Lakulisha. Lakulish, literally the lord of the staff, because these ascetics used to carry a staff. His name is mentioned in the Puranas. Oh, by the way, the Tantras borrow a great deal from the Puranas to talk about the cosmogonies. So their systems of cosmology here is not only the levels of origination or the tattvas, but also the hierarchy of divine beings, divine entities. For instance, Shiva is highest, and under that is Shakti and Sada Shiva, Ishvara. So there is a whole mythological terminology which parallels or corresponds to the metaphysical or metaphysical principles, like the tattvas themselves, which are not Shiva or Shakti or Sada Shiva or Ishvara and Shuddha Vidya. They represent, they are in a way metaphors, if I can use the term, for specific principles or for specific levels that level of not only origination, but a level that level can experience. For example, what Shiva can experience that a Purusha cannot experience. So at the level of Shiva, the experience is complete. Experience of creation is complete. So I hope I'm able to convey the point that these principles of origination, they are actually levels in the creation where there is a hierarchy in the level of experience also. So the Prithvi, if we perceive it as something condensed, that then the level of experience of Prithvi is different from the level of the water and then the fire and then so it becomes subtler and subtler and more expansive as we go up in this cosmogony of which the tantras enumerate. And as I said, they completely borrow it from the Puranas. So the point here that I'm emphasizing, that it is not a complete departure from the Vedic system, because they create their own systems. I was talking about how the first semblance of system that comes to us is from Lakulisha, and his text Pashupata Sutras became extant in 500 BC through a commentary on this text made by a sage called Kondinya. I will just give you a glimpse of the origin, and then we have thousands of scriptures which come to us by the name of tantras. But in the 10th century, and I'm talking about the Shaiva tantras, not about the Saur or Devi or Ganapati or Vishnu tantras. So these are enormous corpus of texts that were later consolidated in the 10th century by the Kashmiri Acharyas. And Acharya Abhinav Gupta is the supreme sage scholar, luminary, who created this compendium called Tantrāloka, in which he integrated and assimilated all the systems that were coming from the pre-existing tantras. Just to give you the names of some important tantras through the pre-medieval or before 10th century, these are Nishwas Tantra, the Vijnanabhairava Tantra, which has become very famous, and Malini Vijyotar Tantra, Netra Tantra. These are some of the names which exposit the principles according to the lines which I told you, these four categories of Vidya, which is the cosmogonies and the knowledge systems, the Vidya, the Kriya, which is the ritual aspect, including Diksha and within this Kriya aspect, the most important facets along with Diksha ritual are the facets of mantra, mandala, and yantras. I'll come back to these three in a few moments, but let me tell you about the other two categories along which the tantras systematize their discipline. So Vidya, Kriya, and then Yoga and Charya. So when I say yoga, we are familiar with, most of us are familiar when we say yoga, we know either Hatha Yoga or the Raja Yoga of Patanjali or the Gheranda Samhita of from the 17th century. These texts give us exposition of the classical yoga. But in the tantras, the yogic practices appeared slightly differently from the classical yogic practices. I'll come to that as well later. My point is that the yogic practices were very basic yogic practices were integrated to enhance the experience of the ritual, the experience of the basically the ritual of mantra, mandala, and the yantra. So we come to that later. Just to give you the difference between the classical yoga and tantra yoga, one important difference is that the tantric yogic dimension completely drops the yama, niyama, and the asanas, because they are presupposed in the initiate's life. But one limb of yoga is integrated, and that is known as Sattarka. Now, Sattarka can be literally translated as the right reasoning, but it's a technical term which means the right kind of contemplation which should go along with the other practices. So I call it creative contemplation, and not that I call it creative contemplation. Acharya Abhinav Gupta uses the word bhavana for Sattarka. He relates it with bhavana. So bhavana and Sattarka, right kind of contemplation, right kind of reasoning, becomes an important limb of the this staircase of yoga. And it is different from Patanjali's Ashtanga Yoga. So now, because I propose to talk from the practice point of view. So let us come back to the verse that I began with in the beginning, which is an invocation to that supreme energy. Naumi chit pratibham devim param bhairava yoginim. I bow down to that supreme energy which is one with Bhairava, which is the yogini of the Bhairava, which is chit pratibha, which is light of the consciousness. Now here is an example of how the metaphysics and the religious terminology intermingle. So the seeker, modern seeker especially, for whom it's difficult to, conceptualize the deities and even to believe in the divine images, is difficult for them. They have to perhaps track their path through the metaphysical terminology. So here is light of consciousness. So that energy is light of consciousness, and that energy pervades the three. And then, poetically, it is poetically the poet here is expressing that it pervades the three shulas of the Trishula, the three spikes of the Trishula, the three spikes of creation, which is the knower, the knowledge, and the means of knowledge. Now, that, in other words, that light of consciousness, and then to reduce it like consciousness, is the reality of creation, because it is the foundation of perception. It is the foundation of perception. It is the perception. It is the perceiver also. So that energy takes these differentiated forms. It differentiates itself into all that is perceived in the world, that is the objects, prameya, matrimana, prameyansha. Prameya, it differentiates itself into the one who perceives, which is the subject, pramata, mata. Here it is, in the verse it comes as matri. So mata, that is pramata, the perceiver, the subject. And pramana, that is in the verse it comes as mana, matrimana prameyansha, the means of perception. So experience of this energy without its differentiated aspects, experience of this light of consciousness without the differentiated aspects, to experience it in its own purity, to experience it in its own absoluteness, is the goal of the tantric initiate, of the tantric practitioner. Because now there can be different motivations for a desire to experience such a state. The most basic thing is that we all want to expand our Shakti, our energy, even if it's only for healing our body, for healing our mind, for feeling the harmony in our head, hearts, and hands, whatever could be the motivation. But the tantric yogi aims to experience this absolute light of consciousness. But the journey of every yogi, let's say an individual, begins at the empirical level, where our powers are contracted, sankuchit, because of the contraction of that energy in our form. That same energy has contracted itself into our form, and it works upon us in measures. And we get it in measure. I'm using this word because I want to bring you to the word Maya. In mythological terminology, it is called as Maya Shakti. But the literal meaning of Maya is that which measures. So we as individuals who are in this form, we are contracted because Maya Shakti has worked on us. The energy has contracted itself in us. This Maya is the self-measuring principle of the cosmos. So the absoluteness, when it gets contracted by the workings of Maya energy, now energy takes different forms. When we say Maya, that means now it is working as the energy of contraction. And it contracts with this, what is called its kanchukas, with its 5 kinds of ancillaries. And these are, it contracts or it limits the knowledge. So it limits the power of omniscience, which is the probability. It limits the time. So in the sense, it makes time into past, present, and future. It limits the full creativity. That means it gives us creativity, but it is like only this much and this much. It limits through raga. That means it does not give us full satisfaction. We have raga, Raga means attachment. So attachment means detachment from something. So we can only work through dualities of raga and dvesha. We cannot have the fullness of attachment, say. So there is no scope for detachment. So it limits that fullness, and it limits our in the sense that absolute consciousness's power to be in all spaces, niyati. So it fixes us in space, limits our space. So basically, if you leave out knowledge and creativity and raga, that is fullness, time and space you understand clearly. So Maya, it gives us measured experience, because it works our experience through time and space. So we cannot perceive fullness, full experience. Our experience is trapped in the limited time and limited space and limited creativity and limited raga and limited kala and vidya. So these limitations form the content of our being, and these limitations work on our experience of reality, and the major medium of experience of reality is the mind. So our mind perceives the world as we know through senses. For an individual, or let me say it like this, an individual realizes his own existence or perceives his own existence through three factors or three coordinates, as I said. He himself is the knower, is the perceiver of whatever he perceives, which forms his experience. So he's the knower. He is also the means of knowledge because he perceives through his senses. So he's the knower, he is the means of knowledge, and the objects of knowledge are coming to him through his own senses. So this triad is actually located in the mind of the individual being itself. This triad is very important if we ever get to talk. This is called trika. Literally trika means triad, and that's where this whole system, Trika Kashmiri Shaivism, which is actually Trika, not Kashmiri Shaivism. Trika philosophy takes its name, and the three coordinates of knower, means of knowledge, and object of knowledge in conventional terms are depicted as Shiva, Shakti, and Nara. But I don't want to go into this right now because that will take a lot of time to explain how these metaphors, how Shiva is the consciousness, Shakti is the means of knowledge. It is what gives us experience. It works through our senses. And Nara is in a way, the objective reality. Needs more explanation, but I leave it here. Coming back to our individual perspective. From our individual perspective, the triad which is within us, the mind, the senses, and the objects of senses, these three create our experience. And this is what we consider as knowledge in our life. But this knowledge is relative. We want more. This knowledge is not absolute. And we realize from our experience that there is something beyond our own perception, beyond the matter. beyond the objective world of senses. Tantra and yoga tells us that if we cut the mind from the senses, or the food of the senses, or the content of the mind, if we cut the mind, or if we purify the mind from its contents, and content of the mind are generally thoughts or the impressions like of memories, which we call samskaras. These are the content of the mind. So if we cut the mind from its contents, from sense objects, and also free it from its contents, then we can transcend our own mind. We can reach a state of no mind. And then when we have attained, like gone beyond the trappings of our own mind, then we have activated a superior faculty, which is in yogic terms is called psychic faculty. It is almost like creating a vacuum. For instance, I don't know much about theory of relativity of Einstein, but as I perceive it, it's like only in vacuum can you perceive the absolute speed of light. Alokji will be able to talk about it perhaps. But so it's almost like creating a vacuum in the mind. Then it shines like the full light. And then we are capable of absolute experience of all that is there. Activation of the psychic perception also enhances the scope of human knowledge and experience. And as I said, Tantra paves the way for opening of this psychic faculty. Because psychic perception is not dependent on mind or senses. Knowledge can take place without any correlation between the object and the senses and the mind. The only condition is that the mind has to be totally made free of its content. In Tantra, this is called nirvikalpa. Nirvikalpa means without vikalpas. Vikalpa means thought constructs, concepts, ideas. These are vikalpas. And when we say nirvikalpa, it means without thought constructs, without conceptions, impressions. Such a mind is like a waveless mind. This nirvikalpa state, to attain this nirvikalpa state, is the aim of the tantric initiate. In Vijnanabhairava Tantra, and all tantras, by the way, extremely poetic, because they are a dialogue between Shiva and goddess, his consort, Parvati, or Bhairava and Bhairavi, Shiva and Parvati, like this. So tantras are dialogic and beautiful poetry, as well as metaphysics and religion and cosmogony and so on. So Vijnanabhairava Tantra, actually the Upadeshas given in the Vijnanabhairava Tantra are called Nistaranga Upadeshas. Nistarang means waveless. So the aim of these techniques, Vijnanabhairava Tantra, by the way, gives 112 techniques of shifting the paradigm of your mind, bringing it to that Nistaranga state. And Bhairava says that to the goddess, he says that if the yogi adopts even one of these 112 techniques, he can attain that higher mind, that psychic mind, that Bhairava state. Tantras refer to this state as Bhairava state. This analogy, there is an analogy of a still pond which reflects everything. sun, moon, stars, trees, flowers, butterflies, clouds, everything. As against a murky pond full of muddy ripples. So our pond is not still. As we separate our mind from its associations, and yogic and tantric practices of pratyahar, for instance. Pratyahar means withdrawal of senses from their food. So as we begin to separate our mind from their associations through tantra, yoga, then mind becomes, at some point, mind becomes completely empty. And this is the state of pure consciousness, where full experience is possible. These techniques of separating the mind from its contents so that it can become nirvikalpa, they are presented in a very organized manner in the tantras. According to the level of the individual, we get 4 kinds of upayas. Acharya Abhinavgupta has given them very elaborately, has talked about the upayas very elaborately in Tantrāloka. So if the individual, because every individual has different constitution, his mind can be very, very scattered, his mind can be very focused, his body can be very healthy, can be less healthy, the 2 hemispheres of his brain could be in harmony, totally in harmony with each other, may not be in harmony with each other, so that the mind is totally vikshipta or scattered. So according to the level of the health, of the perceptivity, of the sensitivity, of ability to focus, and the guru judges this ability of his disciple, of the initiate. That's why Diksha is extremely important in the tantric fold, to enter the tantric fold. So the upayas are given according to the level of your capabilities. If you are working mostly at the physical level, the upaya is anavopaya. Anavopaya comes from the word anu. The upaya for which involves the anu means the empirical individual, where the medium is for the practices is body itself. So bodily postures, breath, and so on, mudras and bandhas. So what are the practices, if you see, of the Hatha Yoga and classical Patanjali Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayam, they are all covered in Anavopaya itself. So tantras take you to higher upayas then further. That means Hatha Yoga, etc. are very basic in Tantra. They go further. So they conceive that individual can be more, at a different level, can be already present at a higher level, where he can use the upaya, which is called Shaktopaya, the means of energy, where energy in the sense the mind itself is used to go beyond the mind by the use of mantras, or what is called Shuddha Vikalpa. I used the word Sattarka before. So mantra is used to focus the mind and to go beyond the mind. And this is because mantra has tremendous energy. Sound, these are very subtle sound formulas. The sounds are so refined that they create vibrations in your own brain. So these are the means of, mantra is the means of energy, but your mind has to have a certain level to practice. That is Shaktopaya. If your level is a little bit, is further high, then you use the means of just the awareness. Now, awareness is different from mental perception. Awareness is a faculty which is not of the mind, it is of the being. So here, anything can stimulate the shift in your awareness. This is Shambhavopaya, means of awareness. Anything, a floating cloud in the river, reflected in the river, a bird, a waterfall, or a rainbow, or a face of your beloved, or face of your child, anything, the glance from the Guru, a word from the Guru, Swataha Gurutaha Shastrataha, anything can become the stimulating factor to give that shift to your awareness, and then you are in the Shambhavopaya. If you are further more advanced, then you need no upaya. This is called Anupaya. Coming back again to the, another aspect of practices. In Tantras, the focus of the practice is on the development of the central channel. In Pratyabhigya Hridayam, Kshemaraja gives a very little sutra and a beautiful sutra, Madhya Vikasad Chidananda Labha. By the expansion of the central channel, you get the bliss of consciousness. Now, those who are practitioners of yoga, they know that a great force is present in the near the bottom of our spine, near the reproductive organ and the excretory organ. There is a psychic point where Mooladhara chakra is there, and there a lot of energy is kind of accumulated there. And through our breath, we have two nostrils. There is a reason for these two nostrils. I think time is, I'm now looking, it's just 3 minutes, but I'll quickly then finish. I'm now talking about Kundalini Tantra. Tantric practices focus a great deal on the raising of this energy. Two forces are working in a normal individual, the Ida and the Pingala, the physical force and the mental force, the lunar and the solar force, the positive and the negative force. They are working, they are constantly nourishing our systems. So the left nostril is connected, the energy that goes through the left nostril is connected with the right hemisphere, and the energy which goes through the right nostril is nourishing our left hemisphere. Now, but these channels, breath is something else and vital energy is something else. Breath is only a vehicle for that energy, that cosmic energy that is constantly nourishing us. Now, as it hits us from the bottom, the two forces rise and they kind of crisscross each other at various junctures, which are called chakras. The sacral plexus, which is Swadhisthana chakra, the solar plexus, which is in the navel area, in the spine, the Manipur chakra, then in the line with the heart at the back in the spine is the Anahat, the cardiac plexus, and then behind this is the Vishuddhi, the the cervical plexus. The chakras are located along the spine. These are the psychic centers, and energy of the right and left, energy that is received from the right and left and is basically goes down, it crisscrosses back again. And these chakras are connected with, I heard my guru saying that these chakras are connecting to 130,000 channels in our body, psychic channels in our body, which nourish each and every cell in the body. So even if you don't want to raise your Kundalini, even if you are not a yogi, the tantric practices allow you to harmonize these simple forces, in your body and nourish it with what is called Shakti, the energy. I think I must end here. And I would like to end with a verse which I love, and which is in a way, the metaphysical representation of the philosophy of the non-dual tantric system, Trika Shaivism. The verses from Paramarth Sar, a 10th century text authored by Acharya Abhinav Gupta. Darpan bimbe yatvan Nagara Gramati Chitrama Vibhagi Bhati Vibhage Naivacha Parasparam Darpanadapicha Vimalatam Param Bhairava Bodha Tadvat Vibhaga Shunyamapi Anyonyam Cha Tatopi Cha Vibhaktama Bhati Jagadeta. Just to give you a rough translation, just like the city, the village, and other various reflections are reflected in the large mirror, and they appear to be different from each other and also from the mirror. They appear to be different. The reflections appear to be different from each other as well as from the mirror. In the same way, in the transparent consciousness mirror of the Parampara Bhairava, although it is completely undifferentiated, all these reflections of the world appear to be different from him as well as from each other. Thank you for listening and being there.
Okay, so thank you, Alka ji, for this very informative and sundar presentation on Tantra. So it was a very wonderful start, an introduction for us all who are wanting to know themselves, deepen awareness within themselves, and celebrate all aspects of life through the knowledge of Tantra. There is a lot that indeed we need to know and experience about Tantra. So now I'll open the floor for question and answer. So if you have any question or any reflection, then go ahead. Yes, Samrita.
Hello, Alka ji. Thank you for explaining. I mean, this is too much information right now, actually, because each of this information can be, dealt with in depth. मेरे दो questions हैं. The first one being, that you said that there are Ganpati Tantra and Devi Tantra. Like in which hierarchy will it belong to with respect to the Shaiva or Shiva Tantra? And could you just kind of explain that a bit? And then I will ask my second question.
So unfortunately, these tantras are not extant. And so the only tantras that are extant right now are the Shaiva tantras. And with Shaiva, Rudra, and Bhairava tantras. So within the Bhairava tantras, we also have goddess dominant tantras, so Shakti dominant tantras. So they come under the Devi. And in fact, the Devi dominant, Shakti dominant tantras are superior to the Bhairava tantras. And Trika Tantra is a Shakti dominant tantra. And actually, what is said is that the Shaivites are actually the practitioners of Shakti, path of Shakti only. So Shakti is everything. In Tantras, Shakti is everything. So Shiva is just like, the holder of the Shakti.
Okay. Okay, now it kind of makes sense. Also, since you said that the Tantra rituals and the sutras are in like maybe in poetic terms, right? In poetic verses. So each person interprets or understands in their own way, right? So is that the reason initiation is so important, Diksha so important, because each guru will understand the text in a very different way, right? Or how does that happen?
Yeah, in order to safeguard the knowledge, the knowledge, that's why it is given within the parampara. So if you are not within the parampara, you will not be an authorized master to teach it. And yeah, these are very mystical texts. So unless there is a master who is teaching you, you cannot make out what is said in the. So there are mantras which are hidden, like very, very bija mantras are hidden within, like, within the verse, within the poetic verse. So strong mantras would be hidden, like the whole Kaila Hrim, Hasaka Hala Hrim will be a beautiful verse of poetry. So like that.
Okay, okay. Thank you so much. Thank you, Alka ji.
Thank you, Samrita. Okay. So do we have any other question or reflection? Okay, so as you have already covered this during your presentation, Alkaji, but I would again ask you to kindly throw some light on how Tantra sees Maya. So if we can just talk about it a little bit.
In Tantra, Maya is conceptualized as Shakti of Shiva himself. It's so in tantric philosophy, the idea is that this Shiva, who is the supreme consciousness, by its own will. So, because every system has to explain itself, darshana. Every darshan has to logically reason itself out as to what, as you said, what is Maya, what is what in its conceptualization, its knowledge conceptualization. So they give this facet to supreme consciousness, which is conceived as Shiva or Bhairava, that Param Shiva out of its own Swatantriya Shakti. So this Swatantriya Shakti, it changes into various Shaktis, like it takes different forms. Now it is electric energy, now it is sound energy, now it is some other energy. So this Swatantra Shakti of Shiva, he has freedom to do, and out of his free will, this Ichha, the Swatantra Shakti turns into Ichha Shakti, Jnana Shakti, and Kriya Shakti. The power of the will, power of knowledge, and power of action. So this Swatantra, and then out of its own Ichha Shakti, it wants to veil its own being, its own supreme being, because it wants to experience the other levels of its own, like it, out of its own joy. So Maya is a Shakti which is the veiling power of supreme consciousness in Tantras. Maya is a Shakti in Vedanta, which they call unexplainable. So it is like āhnika Shakti. It can't be explained. So they just kind of, erase the question when it comes to what is avidya, what is Maya. They say that it is unexplainable. In Vedanta, they said Maya is just there. Maya and avidya are synonyms in the Vedanta. But in Tantra, Maya is a Shakti which veils, and it can also, if it is turned inwards, like if it is turned to the world, then it veils the consciousness. But if its Shakti is turned inward, then it expands the consciousness. So this is how, it's a very beautiful concept. I have written a paper on it. If you like, you can, I'll send it to you.
It's very interesting. Please do send us the paper. And okay, so Madhuri is writing. Okay, so actually it's a question from all of us. How could we learn more about Tantra? Can you suggest a book for a beginner?
So the book for a beginner is Pratibhigya Hridayam. It's very easy, just 20 sutras. But the primary text for this tradition which I follow, which is the Siva Sutras. So you can go first to Pratibhigya and then to Siva Sutras, or first to Siva Sutra and then to Pratibhigya Hridayam. Pratibhigya Hridayam is by Kshem Raja, 10th century scholar, and Siva Sutras were by Vasugupta. But they have been translated into English, and good editions have been brought out by Motilal Banarsidas, edited by Jaidev Singh. But you can't understand Tantras unless you do a little bit of practice. I'm so thankful to Alokji. I'm totally flattered by your presence. Alokji is my most revered and beloved friend, teacher. So he had been listening. I'm totally humbled by his presence. Abhishek is there, and Miran came, and now they have left. Meenaji also, and Madhuji, extremely accomplished people, and they were listening. So thank you for your presence. I think nobody wants any more questions.
Do we have any other question?
I have a question. Basically, as you said, that there is a consciousness and there is Maya. Consciousness, supreme consciousness is Shiva, and Maya, we call it Shakti, So, can they exist independently? Or they need each other?
ठीक से समझ नहीं आया आपका क्वेश्चन, एक बार फिर से.
विमल जी, आपकी आवाज आई थिंक नहीं आ पा रही है ठीक से. Can you speak louder?
Yeah, like for the supreme consciousness to feel itself, Maya is needed.
That's a very nice question. For the Supreme Consciousness to feel itself, Maya is not needed. It has intelligence and it has energy. So it has, like consciousness and intelligence are two words I'm using interchangeably. Maya is needed to differentiate itself into the creation. So Maya is used to manifest the creation within that full circle of blissful energy and intelligence. So Shiva and Shakti are just one. Consciousness and energy are completely like, one is the holder and other is the held one. It's like they say, Agni and its Dahya Shakti, fire and its power to burn. You can't separate that. So it's same like Shaktiman and the Shakti. Maya is a different form of energy which comes at a much lower level in the manifestation, when the process of manifestation is happening. And by the way, we see manifestation as a sequence. It is not like that. It is like a spanda. It's happening and dissolving and happening and dissolving. But then, so Maya, to cut it short, Maya is not needed for Supreme Consciousness to experience itself.
I mean, to say it simply, I just wanted to express my question in a different way. That say for the subject, object is needed to experience itself.
The question seems to be very good and interesting, but it's not coming clearly.
Like say, yeah, consciousness, if we take consciousness is a subject, which is subjective. The consciousness is subjected by the object, So if the object is not there, then can the consciousness be conscious?
Then the consciousness is pure. Then the consciousness is full light.
Okay.
It is experiencing itself as fullness. But when there is a spandan, there is a wave of creation within it, then different objects, it objectifies itself by looking at itself. It's almost like, I look at this hand, my own hand, and in a way, I make it an object of my own perception, although it's like I'm experiencing it completely as an integral part of myself. But when I objectify it, like I have a nail which I have to cut, so I'm objectifying my own integral part by perceiving it particularly. So as I perceive it, I create it also with my awareness.
Thank you. Thank you.
मीरान
जी अलका जी,
आप इतनी देर सुनते रहे.
just
Thank
trying
you
to comprehend. नहीं क्या बात कर दी आपने. It's a privilege to listen to you, and it stretches the brain the more you're trying to comprehend. It's the brain cells go into overdrive to try and internalize whatever you have articulated so well. So just trying to think of a question, but I think a lot of in such cases, a lot of such questions are the question answers the answer itself. So
Okay, so if nobody has any question, then let's end the session here. So thank you, Alka ji, for this wonderful, powerful presentation. And we are looking forward to learn more from you about Tantra. And also thank you everyone for joining. Thank you Meena ji, Samrita, Meenakshi, Vimal ji, Avantika, Alok, Rajiv, Prosperity, I forgot your name.
Miran.
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 Okay. Indu, Abhishek, Sameer, Antisha, Tarun, Devika, Archana, Mansa. Thank you everyone for joining. And yes, hope you have a lovely rest of the day. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.